Good evening, members. Welcome to Cabinet on Tuesday, 31st of August at 3 p.m. in the Council Chamber Town Hall. Item number 1, membership of the Cabinet. We've got apologies from Councillor Eric Firth and Councillor Paul Davis. Everybody else is here, and welcome back, Councillor Viv Kendrick. Nice to see you. We've just come back from a mine operation, and it's good to see you back. And Mohan, good to see you as well, because you had an eye operation as well, so good to see you. Item 2, minutes of previous meetings. Are they a correct record? Yes, thank you, members. Item 3, declaration of interest. If any members have any interest to declare, please complete the form and hand it in to Andrea at the end of the meeting. Same goes for members that are joining us virtually. Please fill the form in and email it back at your when you can. Admission of the public. There isn't any members of the public. No, member of the council. Yeah, that's Councillor Elizabeth Reynolds. I know we've been working virtually, but I'm sure you've seen it before. Anyway, item 4, any deputations and petitions. I don't have any information that we have received any. Thank you. Item 6, questions by members of the public. We don't have any members of the public, so there is no member question time. Item 7, questions by elected members. Any questions by any elected members? Andrea? No. Okay. Item. Oh, sorry, Councillor Martin. Please see you again. Hope you've had a nice summer holiday, Martin. And I can see you in your bicycle gig here. Have you been cycling?
I have, Shabir. Strange thing to say. Getting a bit of feedback there. I was contacted by the media today, and that's one of the reasons why I'm in the cycling kit, because they were talking about the Transport for the North Atkins report about the visitor economy and transport in the north of England. Can you hear me?
Question, Martin. Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, good. So, yes, good. So I've set the context. I was asked about the visitor economy and transport for the north of England, the Transport for the North report, which has just come out. And I was quite surprised and disappointed that there are no visitor attractions listed in Kirklees in Transport for the North report. Can you tell me why this is?
Martin, I will get a response for you, because I've been on leave for the last 2 weeks and I've just come back today, so I've not seen the report. But what I will do is I will find out what the situation is and I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Okay, Martin, thank you very much. Any more questions?
Yes, please.
Yes, Martin?
Yeah, leading on from that, and looking forward to Kirklees' visitor economy. As I say, we all know that there are a number of places stretching around. I mean, I've been out around Denbydale today on my bike, and we know we've got Oakwell Hall and the beauties of the Home Valley. And could we look at what can be done to stimulate the visitor economy, and working with our aspirations for reducing carbon, reducing journeys, for the visitor economy from active travel? I've got a report here from Cycling UK, the National Cycling Organisation, and a cyclist on a day out on a bike can spend £15 a day. And I can well believe that, having been to some of the lovely cafes we've got in the area. And if we can encourage people to spend a night here, that goes up by £27. So obviously there's a considerable amount of money potentially if we can attract active travel and cycle tourism. We're on the Pennine Bridleway, the West Yorkshire Cycleway, and many other routes. So can we look at what can be done for our visitor economy in stimulating cycle tourism?
Thanks, Martin. And again, it's a really good idea. I think Councillor Will Simpson will be happily contribute. Will, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Leader. Thank you, Martin. It's nice to see you. Yeah, I think you've made an important link there between our tourism and active travel, because as you say, we've got our culture and our heritage and our tourism strategies in development that will be coming through soon. Sorry, Councillor Taylor's just joined us. Sorry to caught my eye there. Hi, John. And as you've rightly said, Martin, cyclists do spend quite a bit of money, sometimes in my own patch of Denberdale, as you said earlier, and we also have the active travel strategy ongoing as well. So I think you've made an important link between those, and that's something we'll want to pick up. On your wider point about stimulating that tourism sector, as you say, I think we've got the tourism strategy that we're working on and hoping to deliver in the next year. Something that I've been pushing for since I took up the role was what I think is quite important is destination marketing in selling Kirklees as a place, and I think that's something that we'll be looking to develop as part of that as well. So I do, yeah, absolutely take on board your point, and I think you've made an important link there, and we'll be certain to follow it up.
Thank you, Councillor Will Simpson. Martin, have you got any supplementary questions in response to Councillor Will Simpson's response to you?
No, I look forward to hearing from that. I have another question if I can, if we're still within 30 minutes.
Yes, you may ask another question.
Thanks. I'm sure all members of Cabinet will be aware that the situation with HGV drivers is in the media. There's a shortage of HGV drivers, and conditions for drivers has been highlighted as one of the problems. This was brought home on a reality TV show where Pickford's drivers, when they're doing some quite expensive house removals, were still sleeping in the back of their lorry. You may remember, Leader, excuse me, you may remember that I raised with you before the pandemic my concerns that there is nowhere secure and suitable within Kirklees for overnight parking for HGVs. The only official HGV parking area I'm aware of in Kirklees is a flat piece of tarmac in the back streets of Dewsbury, and I think it's £10 to park for the night, and you don't even get a toilet there. Given that just about everything that we touch in our industry and commerce travels at some point by road, shouldn't we as Kirklees, or we as a region, be looking to make sure that those who keep, and forgive the pun, the wheels of industry turning, have somewhere safe and secure to park overnight, where especially obviously when they've got the goods on board, those goods need to be secure. But for the situation in Dewsbury, where there isn't even a toilet or washroom on site, I think it's deplorable.
Thanks, Martin. Yes, before I bring Councillor Peter Mcbride in, who will respond to you in more detail, I am aware of the national situation regarding HGV drivers, and that debate really is for another audience, but I think the headlines are that we have a number of drivers that are of European background who don't feel secure in this country in terms of their stay, and on the back of Brexit, you know, a lot of them have actually gone back, and there is a massive shortage around the drivers. But in terms of your specific point, in terms of overnight stay, Councillor Peter Mcbride will answer. Peter, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I do remember who you are. Yeah, there is a major national problem at the moment. It's a direct result of Brexit, which one could have anticipated. Anybody sensible could have anticipated, but the government clearly has not. It has had no plans in place, utterly ineffectually dealing with a problem compounded by the pandemic. And thus we have a situation we're having to deal with at the moment, which is leading to a major problem in all of our supermarkets. If I was a Conservative, I would rather keep quiet about this, because it's much to be ashamed of if you're a Conservative.
Councillor Martin Ball, you got this.
Once again, Peter, as he has done so often, has totally missed the point. As you said, Leader, the issue I was raising was not about the shortage of drivers, and there's a number of things there, and I seem to remember, Peter, that there were quite a number of Labour MPs and politicians on both sides, as there were Conservatives on both sides of the Brexit debate. The serious point that I was raising is that Kirklees is taking money from HGV drivers purely for the purpose of parking on a piece of tarmac in Dewsbury, which hasn't even got a toilet or washroom on site. Now, again, as I said, this is something I'd raised with the leader quite some time ago, but shouldn't the authority and shouldn't the wider region be looking to make sure that those vulnerable drivers who have to get up the next day and drive anything up to 48 tonnes around our roads have somewhere safe and secure where they can lay their heads overnight?
Martin, I think your point's been well made, and you're right, you did raise this with me, and we do need to actually look more harder in terms of how we provide the welfare facilities. But I think both myself and Peter Mcbride responded to your first issue was around the lack of drivers. Because, you know, to be fair, right, yeah, you did mention that, and that is what Peter acknowledged. But I acknowledge also, and I accept what you're saying regarding we do need to start looking at welfare facilities, and I will ask again what we are doing. Thanks, Martin. Any more questions from Councillor John Taylor? I forgot your name then.
You're getting forgetful now.
Peter forgot mine, I forgot yours. John, over to you.
Thank you, Shabir. It's a question for, I think, Councillor Mather, but it's concerning road safety in schools. Is road safety around schools a priority for this authority?
Always.
Right, thank you. Because I'm concerned, and I'd like to raise an issue which goes back to 2019. So my local high school, Shelley College, which is actually in Will's ward rather than my own ward, there were proposals to address issues around children leaving the school and crossing a busy main road with the provision of a pelican crossing. That has been agreed, the design's been done, and this was back in 2019, over 2 years ago. So for 2 years I've been chasing this issue. It's still not being delivered. It's not being delivered because this authority doesn't seem to be able to reach an agreement with West Yorkshire about moving a bus stop. I've been asking for 2 years for someone to take ownership of this in Kirklees. And I think it reflects badly on this administration that I have been waiting over 2 years for someone, and it has had 2 cabinet members in this ward, but they haven't managed to get a bus stop moved so we can address road safety issue outside Shelley College. So the students will be returning to school next week without the security in place that they ought to be able to expect, and the parents quite rightly are demanding. So I'd ask again, is this council and this administration serious about road safety? Because the actions don't suggest it's taken as a priority. Thank you.
John, as I've said, we're serious about safety across the district, especially our schools, as I've said, and I will say it again. It is. Okay. This is the first I'm hearing, and I am concerned that if the scheme has been agreed and we're waiting for a bus stop to be moved, it's the first I've heard, and I will look into it on an urgent basis. Thank you. I wish you'd brought it during the summer holidays so we could have done something about it. But we will look into it and make sure that we get onto our colleagues. Is it Wicker, you said? Yes.
So I understand it's Wicker to do with Metro,
yes,
to do with
yes,
bus stops.
With the bus stops. So I will get on to get the officers to get in touch. But can you please let me know precise locations and everything?
Yeah, no problem. I mean, to be fair, Councillor, that I've been chasing it on a regular basis for 2 years with officers, so they're well aware of what needs to happen. Just doesn't seem to get the priority it demands.
Well, thank you for bringing it to the council. I will look into it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. You got a supplementary? Right. Yeah, go on, another question.
I think this one's probably for you, Leader, but you may well ask one of your colleagues to answer. And it follows on from the discussion we had at the last meeting about concerns about vacancies across the council and the number of vacancies that we're currently carrying. And I want to understand what, as an administration, you're doing about it. My specific today relates to planning enforcement, where I have a number of planning enforcement issues outstanding where I'm talking to the officers, and it is no disrespect to the officers because they are excellent officers, but they don't have the ability to undertake enforcement action because they don't have the staff to do the work. So we have outstanding enforcement issues. I have one resident who I won't name who is suffering significantly with their mental health as a result of these issues. But at the moment, it's paused and nothing is happening because we don't have the staff to deal with it. So I ask again, what is the administration doing to tackle this issue? Thank you.
Councillor Peter Mcbride, regarding enforcement officers.
Well, if the councillor had the sense, he could have contacted me. I would have ensured that any difficulty he may have had could have been attended to immediately, but of course he didn't. He chooses to raise it in this situation rather than deal with it as most councillors would. It's rather an opportunity to make a big noise over something.
With respect, I've been dealing both with the planning enforcement team and with the strategic director on this issue. My question isn't about whether they're going to progress this particular issue. My question is what you as administration are doing to address the vacancies. And I raised this last month, and I'm raising it again, and I no doubt will continue to raise it in this environment if we still have problems where services aren't being able to be delivered because of the number of vacancies we're carrying. I think that's an appropriate place for me to raise that.
Absolutely.
It's not a specific issue about a particular case.
I understand that.
In which case I would deal with that appropriately.
Yeah, I understand that, but I think you're both right. I think you did raise it, and I think the response I gave was that on the back of the pandemic, on the back of the issues that we're facing nationally, on the back of the amount of development that's taking place, because we are starting to actually do a lot of development across the piece, our officers, I have been assured, are trying to actually get the right resources in the right place. And, you know, we need to make sure that, you know, we actually do recruit and restructure and put resources in where needed. But please be assured that we as an administration and our officers are doing everything they can, because I could say the same thing in my ward. I'm sure the cabinet members can say the same thing in their ward. And across the piece, you've got 69 councillors, and each councillor or each ward, say for example, you have 23 enforcement issues, you can have 23 enforcement officers. It's got to be a pecking order, and not just a pecking order, but there's also a process to undertake. I know that one particular ward, which is a Labour ward, everything is being done right, and that enforcement is taking quite a long time. But we have to follow due process. As a ward councillor, I know that it's always frustrating that we don't see things happening. But in your particular situation, I'm sure the officers are doing everything they can. But if you feel that there's something more that can be done, please do speak to Peter Mcbride, and he will make sure that he actually takes it on board. But I do know that the officers are there where they are needed. But at the moment, yes, things are up in the air, especially on the back of the recovery. But there's always enforcement action taking place across all wards and all parts. But if you want to talk about the specifics, John, to Peter, I'm sure he'll pick it with you. Any more questions? Shall we move on? Martin, over to you.
I don't know if there's anybody else in your room, Shabir, so I mean, much as I like asking you questions, I'm sure you also appreciate getting them from other people. Shabir, with the Cabinet and Council have previously said that it's in favour of the tour of Yorkshire, but I understand from media reports that at the moment there's been no commitment to the 2022 event. So could we have an update on that, please? Because given that there was £98 million economic impact from the previous tour of Yorkshire, as proven by a university study, and that 21% of the spectators who came and watched the race were from outside of Yorkshire. So that's the visitor economy. And that 4,500 cyclists took part in a public open ride and so on. Given those figures and many more about the positive impacts, will Kirklees be backing the tour of Yorkshire and bringing it through our district?
Martin, you know I was with you shoulder to shoulder when the initial meeting took place in Leeds before the pandemic, and we gave our firm commitment. It was really pleasing that also we were going to get the route, part of the route would have gone through Kirklees. I am still committed, my cabinet is still committed, I'm glad you're still committed, and we will be doing everything we can to make sure that we have a fantastic Tour de Yorkshire, and I'm hoping that that'll be next year, but again, that's something that we need to keep on lobbying for to make sure it happens. But I am firmly behind it, and so is my cabinet, and I'm glad you are as well. Thanks. Any more questions, Martin?
Yes, please. Peter's just said in response to John Taylor that if people were serious about planning issues and such like, they would have raised them with him before. I mean, it's quite apposite that on Tuesday, the 27th of August, 2019, at 9:46 a.m., I did email Peter and his two cabinet colleagues and raised an issue about the lack of planning compliance and the lack of maintenance on one of our active travel routes, which actually was in the Dalton ward. It's the Calder Valley Greenway. This is a greenway which is not built and completed according to the planning permission, and where subsequent planning conditions on road safety audits and road safety improvements have not been made. In 2019, so 2 years ago, when I raised it with Peter, he said it wasn't a priority. Is it appropriate now for me to raise this in a cabinet meeting, having raised it with him previously, and said, why isn't planning enforcement and road safety a priority for what was then the deputy leader of the council and two of his colleagues?
Martin, you mentioned that you emailed him, so I'm sure he will respond back to your email. I don't want to get into, although I welcome your questions and your comments, which you know that, but I think we're now getting into sort of like minutiae. Peter will email you back, as you said, you've emailed him. Any more questions, Martin?
Yes, again, developing on planning enforcement. Given the failure of Kirklees to adequately enforce planning conditions on the Murfield 25 site, what confidence can the people of Cleckheaton have that if and when Amazon is passed, the planning conditions imposed and negotiated will be delivered? Because, for example, Kirklees agreed to forego £500,000 from the developer of Murfield 25, which should have gone into Cooper Bridge as part of the Kirklees Strategic Economic Zone supplementary planning document. We now know that Cooper Bridge is some £8 million short of its delivery total. It's got 69 million. It's a £77 million scheme. So giving away £500,000 doesn't seem to be the wisest choice. So what guarantees can we have that for other major schemes coming forward, planning will be rigorously enforced and developers will be made to pay their full whack?
Martin, this is something that you've raised a number of times. Only thing I can do is show you that officers and the cabinet are fully making sure that we get whatever we are due. You know, that I don't want to add anything else because I think it'll be foolish to, but we do make sure that we do everything we can when developers, wherever they are, give us whatever is due to us, and we will make sure that happens. You got a supplementary, Martin?
No, thanks very much.
All right, okay. Thank you, Martin.
Normal service will be resumed.
Right, okay. Thanks a lot. Any more questions from any of the councillors? Okay, members, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item, which is item 8, Home Valley Neighbourhood Development Plan, Examiner's Report and Next Steps. Councillor Peter Mcbride. Peter?
The local community activists in putting together a complex, highly relevant plan which focuses Kirklees' local plan to the details which will apply to Home Valley. It's not a NIMBY document, but a very targeted shaping of community planning. It's a credit to all those who've been concerned, not least the parish council. So I suggest, subject to accepting all the recommendations in the examiner's report. The Home Valley Neighbourhood Plan should be put to a referendum on the issue to take place as proposed in the report. If that referendum comes to an affirmative conclusion, it will be adopted as an integral part of the Kirklees local plan. I move, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mcbride. I think the document is a very extensive document. A lot of detailed work has gone and taken place. The parish council has engaged very, very closely with this report, and there is a process now to follow. And we now, I think it's only right that we actually allow the due process to follow. So I'd like to second them recommendations. Any questions, comments from members? No, thank you. So can we just have a show of hands and we'll approve it for that next steps can proceed. Thank you very much, members. Item 9, Food Safety Service Plan 2021. Councillor Will Simpson, over to you, Will.
Thank you very much, Leader. So what we've got from page 415 to 432 in the agenda is the Food Safety Service Plan, which is a requirement of the Food Law Code of Practice. The FSA, the Food Standards Agency, regulates the delivery of official controls in relation to food safety in England, and they require us to have a food safety plan in place, so that's why it's here before us today. As colleagues will have no doubt read in the report, the food safety function has gone from underperforming in 2017-18, with only 78% of inspections completed, to achieving 94% and 95% of inspections in 2018-19 and 19-20. Historically, we have had a low number of food safety officers for the number of food premises that we have when compared with the national figures, but in spite of this, we have consistently high levels of enforcement. As can be seen in the summary report, quite prior to the pandemic, our officers continue to operate well above the national average of inspections per officer, as can be seen by the ratio of officers to premises. However, the pandemic has, of course, had a massive impact on the councils, on this council function, as it has every other. A significant amount of food safety officers' time was diverted to coronavirus enforcement duties over the last 18 months. So food safety work was being undertaken in accordance with the Food Standards Agency's direction during the pandemic. So this requirement was that the food safety team undertake all high priority work, but all planned food hygiene interventions be deferred to ensure that footfall in businesses was kept to a minimum as a precaution under the coronavirus restrictions. The result of this, as members will have seen, was that only 9.93% of the food inspection programme was completed during 2021. So moving forward, there's clearly a challenge for us in making sure that this function is able to operate and continue to improve as we want it to, which the report outlines on page 430 of the agenda. The key priorities in these actions include looking to be more proactive, to help businesses be more compliant and reduce the need for enforcement action. As part of that work, we have some ongoing work to create a consultancy function, which will hopefully reduce the amount of enforcement that's needed and also create an income generation service for the authority. And we've also, in the 21-22 budget, reprofiled some extra resources for the food safety team, and we'll look to finalise recruitment in the financial year, which will hopefully help in making sure that we get back up and running at the level that we want to. The Food Standards Agency recovery plan was very recently published after this report had been completed. So the service plan will be reviewed in line with the FSA recovery plan to ensure that we're working hand in hand with that, and the inspection programme will be up to date by the end of December 2022. And so that's that for the report. I'm happy to move it. I don't believe we've got any officers here, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor Will Simpson. Very comprehensive. Anybody seconding that? I'll second that. Have we got any comments from anybody? No? Can we all show hands to approve the report? Thank you very much, members. We'll move on to next item is just make sure I've got the right one. Yeah, item 10, determination of mandatory revision to the Kirklees admission arrangements for community and control schools for 2021-22 and 2022-2023. Councillor Carol Patterson, over to you, Carol.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, every year there's an annual consultation about the admission arrangements for our for our schools, the community and voluntary controlled schools that we maintain. That takes place in November, December each year, and then it is, if agreed, or the outcome of that in agreed is the year after, and then that is implemented the year after that. So there's quite a long lead-in time to these admissions arrangements. The government, though, this year, earlier this year in May, asked that schools or other authorities adopt some very specific arrangements, admissions, which needed to be added to our admissions code. We are very happy to do that, and that's here before you today. I should point out you've got the report here. You've also got our existing admissions code for 2021 and our admissions code for 21-22. And it is this is where it always gets confusing. It is the 21-22 code, Appendix 2, that you've got in front of you. There is actually an error in that, which I should point out. It's not a significant error, it's a typing error, but on page 5 of Appendix 2, or page, the actual page of our documents is 475, the 4th bullet point down should have been removed. It's repeated above, or the correct paragraph bullet point is repeated above, but that 4th bullet point needs to be removed. So it doesn't make any significant difference, but unfortunately, sorry, there was a typographical error in it. So, the amendments that the government have asked us to add affect a relatively small number of children, but are important, needless to say. Those are outlined in section 2 for you there. There's admission priority to be given to children who adopted from state care outside of England. They are to be given the same priority as children adopted from within England. I mean, that's obviously England, that's obviously Scotland, Northern Ireland, etc. as well, but elsewhere. So, I mean, that's a relatively small number, but we're obviously happy to agree that and to make that sure that lines up. There's in-year admissions, we're being asked to have a timescale added to that or applied to that, which again, we're quite happy to agree. 15 school days, 3 weeks, which obviously to anybody else would seem quite reasonable, that if you want to move your child or a child needs to be moved in year, then you shouldn't have to wait longer than 3 weeks to find a new school place. It does pose a few resource problems for ourselves, but we obviously will overcome those because, as I say, we're happy to accept that amendment. And then finally, the children of service personnel and Crown servants. I'm not sure if that's actually very applicable just at the moment, but they should be given, again, priority and be given a notice of a place before they necessarily arrive in England and take up residence. If they're applying for, they know where they're going to be moving to and they want their child to attend a school in that area. So, it's a relatively small number of children that affects, but we're happy to accept all of those. This will apply, or would normally apply, from the 1st of September, but in this instance, because of the lead-in time, it won't apply until November this year. Our next annual consultation will also begin in November this year. It will be carried out over November, December, with the outcome reported to Cabinet in February 2022, and then will apply from that will be applied from 23-24. And whilst these new arrangements only apply to our own maintained schools, we will make sure that we work as closely as possible with academies and trusts and other voluntary aided schools to ensure that they also comply with this as far as possible. They have to make their own arrangements. They don't have to comply with our code, but we will work with them to make sure that those amendments are accepted. So I would like to recommend to you the revised admission arrangements for 21-22 as set out in Appendix 1 and for 22-23 as set out in Appendix 2 with the amendment I made earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll-Paterson. Viv, do you want to second that?
Yeah.
Councillor Liz Reynolds, do you want to comment, questions?
Yeah, I have got a quick question about that, if that's possible, please. Thank you very much for the report. It took some reading, but I've always felt that any policy decision in local or national government needs to consider the needs of our children. They're the ones that are going to inherit the future from us. And I am pleased that the schools admissions arrangements in Kirklees will continue to take into account our children's health and well-being, but also their future in the light of the climate change warnings that we've been given. I note in item 3.4 in the admissions document, it gives detail of the need for local priority, which fulfills both factors of well-being and of the climate change issue. But I am concerned that these changes only apply to maintained schools and that academy trusts are asked to comply but not enforced to. I ask in particular because in my ward in Goka, an academy trust is planning to close one of our local primary schools and bus the children, some as young as 5 years old, over a mile away to another school. The loss of the school at the heart of the community will be devastating and will affect all the residents, the older ones who live next door, and of course the families, with limited resources having to arrange visits to school by bus or taxi. We are in the process at the same time as a community of encouraging all our residents to walk or cycle to work or school. This will now be impossible for these children. So my question is, do academy trusts not have to consider climate change and health and well-being too? Surely we're all in this together.
Councillor Carroll-Paterson, do you want to answer that, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Happy to answer that. I mean, yes, I'm quite proud of the fact that our admissions policy does actually give greater priority to local children attending local schools than perhaps some other authorities in the country. And it is something that we are very keen to promote, not just in terms of climate change and air quality, but because, as you say, schools are at the heart of their community. It's really important for the health and well-being of the children that they can walk to school, but also that their friendship groups within the school are those can be maintained outside of school, that they help to build strong communities locally, and we all benefit from having those schools as the heart of our communities. And yes, but so our policy, our admissions policy, does make sure that there's that sort of priority. And yes, it is unfortunate that that Chair Matt is at the moment in discussions with the Regional Schools Commissioner and the DFE to actually close one of their schools, which is right at the heart of your ward, a community in your ward, and bus the children, as you say. But to answer your question, I mean, they certainly, as I've already stated, academies and trusts and other schools don't have to abide by that policy that we set out, and that we consult the community and schools on. We do, though, however, work as closely as we can with academies and trusts to certainly promote our own values to them and hope that they share them. I mean, it has been one of the pluses, if there are any, from the pandemic, that we have built up a relationship with both local academies and with the Regional Schools Commissioner and with the DFE, for that matter, during the pandemic. And we hope that we will be able to bring some influence to bear on the decision of ShareMat about this school to promote our values. But unfortunately, it's only influence. We are not in control of their own, they are in control of their own admissions policies. Thank you for raising the issue.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Have we got a supplementary? No, thank you. Any more comments? Can we have a show of hands and we'll get the report approved? Thank you very much. Item 11, Corporate Financial Monitoring Report, Quarter 1 for 2021-2022. In the absence of Councillor Paul Davies, Councillor Peter Mcbride will move this item. Peter, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. In Paul's absence, I propose the quarterly report at Quarter 1. Picking up the headline issues, we are currently 1.6 million overspent on a budget of 320 million, which is 0.5% of the total. That should be easily clawed back within the year. A further £7,300 support grants were made in 2021-22, which totals 30 million to eligible businesses. Direct support grant forecast in-year deficit of 9.8 million and an overall deficit forecast for the year of 34.9 million will need a conversation with the national government with regard to this in the management of our overall debt. So we need to negotiate with the government what ultimately we might have to pay of that total and what might be forthcoming from central government. With regard to the HRA, there's a small deficit of 0.3 million. The collection fund has been adjusted downwards by 9 million due to the impact of COVID on council tax and the business rate collection. With regard to capital, the 223 million spend is a significant scaling up, although the intent was a major increase, and we still intend that. The ability to spend that amount may be slightly questionable because that will be the issue, the ability to spend that amount rather than the willingness to spend it. There's some specific capital proposals in the report on, for example, street lighting, adult daycare, small towns and villages, which are contained within the existing headline capital approvals and funding envelopes. So with regard with the inclusion of those comments, I recommend the report to the committee and propose its support.
I'd like to second that. Any questions from any members? Councillor John Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I'd firstly just like to thank officers for the comprehensive report that they pulled together, and they, given all the other things they've been trying to do through the COVID pandemic in terms of supporting other areas, it's remarkable that they've managed to, sort of provide us with the information that we've got today. There was one point that just jumped out at me that I just thought was worth asking about, and Peter, it may not be you that can answer this, to be fair, but under 1.6.2, it talks about the overspend within cleansing services, and it's just a comment that just really stood out to me. One of the reasons for that overspend is severe contamination in green bins, and that surprised me. So I just wonder if anybody's able to, illuminate that or provide any information regarding that, and whether that's a trend. Is that something to do with, the pandemic, or is anybody able to explain that one, if they may? And then your point towards the end, Peter, about the capital programme, I agree with you, and it's something that certainly will be aware that we have debated many times through scrutiny, corporate scrutiny. We've both sat on that, and it comes back to my question I was asking earlier about vacancy management. one of the challenges is if we don't have the people in place, we may have the budgets, but we haven't got the people to do the do. So I suspect we may see some refreshes of that as we go through the year again. But perhaps if somebody, if they're able to come back on that, the severe contamination in green bins, because it's a worrying trend, isn't it? Thank you.
I can answer that. I'll let you answer it. It's your portfolio. But I think I know the answer, but go on.
Thanks, Shabir. Yeah, so throughout the pandemic, we did see a significant increase, but it was a very localised increase. It wasn't in every part of the borough of green bin contamination to a level that would usually have, we would have responded with some stronger enforcement. However, we took the decision that because of the circumstances of it being the pandemic, it wasn't the right time to be taking such a hard-handed approach with people, and we didn't want to make it more difficult for residents. So as an administration, we took the decision to take a softer approach, and we've, as I think you know from discussions that we've had at previous meetings, we've taken on a number of new waste advisors who've been doing a lot of work recently, and a lot of that has been targeted in the areas where we know that the figures weren't what we want them to be, and Councillor Mather and I have been asking for regular updates on the exact figures from those areas, and we have seen literally every week, a week-on-week increase and impact from that approach that we've taken. So it is improving, but yeah, you're right to query it. We did have an increase in contamination during the pandemic.
Thank you, Councillor Will Simpson. Cathy, do you want to add to that? Yeah, you're getting two cabinet members.
No, I'm not adding to that. What I wanted to add is, within this report on page 519, 1.12.14, Councillor Bolt mentioned about investment in tourism. And I'm glad to see one of the places he actually mentioned was Oakwell Hall. And we are investing 40,000. That is to attract more tourism, make the facility better and operating throughout the year. And I think it's something to be welcomed. And I think if Councillor Bolt's still online, should note that there's actually going to be some lovely stuff. So there's different areas that we are investing in, and it's well worth the read.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Cathy Scott. Yeah, well noted. John, you want to come back?
Yeah, just if I back to Will. Have we taken any learnings out of that in terms of, you know, the waste strategy that's coming through now? Because obviously there's a reason why people contaminated that waste. So have we picked up anything? Because we are talking about, you know, different collection of options as we look at the waste strategy. So I just think it's really, really important that we take the learnings from whatever it was that caused that problem.
Yeah, certainly. It's something that the team put a lot of focus into and work into, and there's definitely learning to take from that, and that they are taking from that and they have taken forward. I don't know if Naheed wants to add anything or not, but it's certainly something that they're taking some learning from and has informed how we're progressing with the waste strategy.
Yeah, I just wanted to support Councillor Simpson. John, you know that whilst we've been working on this strategy, we've been actively listening to our councillors, to our residents, looking at the statistics to ensure that the model going forward is actually responsible and flexible. And so there has been a lot of learning. We can actually pinpoint where the issues are and how to actually circumvent some of the upturn or downturn, as the case may be. So I would say yes to the response.
Yes, I just remembered as Naheed was speaking, I thought I'd take the opportunity to say that our cleansing team have been shortlisted for a national award for their work throughout the pandemic. So I just wanted to shout from the rooftops about that while we're live streaming, to say well done and thank you to that team, and we'll certainly rooting for you come the awards.
Anybody else wants to make any comments or ask any questions? No? Sorry? It's been moved, yes, and it's been seconded as well. So can we all show hands to agree to that report? Thank you, members. And that's the end of that.